Hi everyone, it's Kate from Awakening Your Abundance Creatively, and I'm just putting together some tutorials. I'm hoping it'll be relatively short, but we'll see how we go. Around some questions that I've had, and one was from Lucy Bates in regards to, I'm taking it as putting a page together, but she may have meant a journal, and the must-haves that I use when I'm art journaling. So I'll run through the must-haves first. These are my go-to tools that I use. So I like to have paper. Now I put my journals together differently. So this is 190 GSM. And these are quite easy to rip out. It's watercolor. There is like a dotted line against there, so you can easily rip it. As you can see, rips out quite easily, and you don't get that little perforated. You can leave it in and you just use that as your journal. There's no right or wrong way to having a journal. Some people have preferences, but if you're just starting out, you know, find your way, find what suits you the best. Now with these, what I was doing was buying these cheaper journals, right? And this one is unused. I had forgotten I had actually just found it, so I'm like, woohoo, it's a new journal. So what I've done is I've stuck this 190 GSM paper onto the pages, because these, once you've done some journaling in them, if you do a lot of layering and watercolor, it will buckle. But I find if you put one of these on there, you can get bigger books. I think I've got, this is A4, I've got an A3, and I cut it down to size. And then just stick that in, and I use, where is it? Masking tape. So just your masking tape to put on the binding there, because that will rip otherwise if water gets into it, and you'll lose pages. So if you put your masking tape in there, once you've glued things over it, you can't even see. And you can put the tape around the edges as well. Or another of my go-to is the washi tapes. They're relatively low cost and they're really effective to do borders around your journaling. So that's the larger one. These are the smaller ones that you can get, and these are quite good if you just want to do a quick journal page. Relatively, you know, cheap, and they're 150 GSM. I was just using that one for sketching, so again I found another one, a smaller. I did declutter my art room the other day, and I've come across all these journals. It's like, whoa! But as you can see, you know, that was single pages. I haven't actually stuck anything over that, but I think because they're smaller, they seem to be okay. Whereas if you did that on a larger size, because there's more paper, it's, I don't know, it just rips easier and doesn't really take a hammering as long, like as easily as these ones. Yeah, so that's the background I've done to get ready. So that's a good practice too if you haven't got a lot of time. And if you're like me, if I see a white page and I'm not that inspired to get into something, I get a block. So if you just slap it down, do a background, and then leave it and come back to that. You know, I've got some things going on in my head now that I could put on that. So that's one good way. And yeah, it's, I won't go into the rest of that. I was going to say it's a very good meditative state as well. If you just want to do something that's mind-numbing, you don't have to think about. So they're the ones that I use. And also, if you don't want to rush out and buy something straight away, this is just an old diary that I had that I've used. Now these pages are, you know, they're quite flimsy and thin, so I got about 4 of them and just glued them all together, and then put the tape, the washi tape around the outsides, and that's washi tape there, and they seem to hold quite well. So that's another way, you know, to cut some costs until you find your feet with your art journal. If you just want to practice and you don't want to, because some people don't want to ruin their journals, so that's another thing that can block you from starting, is getting to doing something similar to this. So then it doesn't matter if it's, you know, I mean, I miss a page there and it doesn't matter. I can go back and have a play around with that later on. Yeah, so that's a couple of techniques that I've used. Now, my go-to items that I have, array of paint brushes. That's a must-have. And as you can see, like, some of these are quite cheap. These are from the kids section, those ones, because I mean, they take a hammering when you're doing art journaling, because you're painting over different mediums, so they don't have to be perfect. If you want to do more finer details work, you know, do get some good ones that are similar to that. Soft brushes. The real thick, coarse, bristly brushes are more for oils, and you don't really use oil paints in art journaling, so it takes so long to dry. So it's more acrylic paint, watercolour, crayons, textures, pencils, those sorts of things that we use, and then collage. So paintbrushes, that's a must-have. I do suggest, hang on 2 seconds. Put him out to be washed from yesterday. This is my ultimate must-have, is an old brush that you can glue with, because you don't want to be using different brushes each time, because if you don't wash it out properly, you'll wreck them. And as you can see, like, he's quite glued up. But he's my favourite brush. I've named him Basil. I've had him, it's a Basil brush from the TV show back when I was a kid. So yeah, Basil has taken quite a hammering. I've had him since 2002 when I first started folk art. So he's my favourite brush. I did lose him the other day and I was a bit devastated, but I found him again, so that's good. But yeah, have a brush that's old that you can use for gluing, because you do a lot of gluing in art journaling, especially if you love collage like me. So brushes, must have. Masking tape, I would really suggest you have some masking tape. Washi tape, you can get them in so many different colours. Get the ones, I suggest the ones that are very thin and papery. There are others, because if you're doing an edge on a book, so this one here is quite plastic, and you can see that if you fold that over, it doesn't like to stick that well. Like if it's on a book, it won't stick very well on the corners, whereas these ones seem to have more holding power. And you can paint over these, where these are sort of like, they've got a coating on them, so they're a bit resistant to, you know, mixed media, acrylic paint and whatnot. So they're something else that I like to use. Paints. Now I do use a lot of these ones, and these are just, you know, this is $2 and they're pearl paints. That's what I use basically on the cover for the journal, is the pearl, and you get a nice shimmer. In saying that though, you can use any other paint that you've got. The cheaper paints, where's that one gone? So you just have to try out some of your paints. This one here was quite opaque, so you'd have to do quite a few coats to get the coat, like the sheen that you want of paint on your page. It sort of comes through see-through, that's what I'm trying to say. Whereas the more expensive paints, this one. So this one here, this is from my folk art days. I still get this one, the Jo Sonia. They're really quite good paints. You don't need a lot on your brush, and it's acrylic, and so they do last, whereas if you get the cheaper ones you sort of use more. But starting off, just go down to your cheap crafts section of your Kmart or Walmart or wherever it is that you shop, and just grab some paints and have a play around with it and try different ones, because you know the brands that we have here in Australia might not be available for you where you are. So it's sort of trial and error, but start off with the medium price range ones, you know, $2-3 for a bottle or a tube. These tubes here, you know, they cost, that's a Joe Sonia one, they cost about $7-8, so you know they're the more expensive ones, but you can get by with these. In saying that, you can use watercolor as well if you don't want to try acrylic. So these are quite cheap ones, and they're really good. You know, you can make them so they're thicker. They're not as, you don't have to paint like watercolors artists. You can put it on thicker, which works fine. So they're just a cheap brand that I bought. What else? Paper towel. That is another must-have. That would be a must-have. Pencil, eraser. These are another one of my must-haves. They're just paper rolled up into what are they called? Blenders, I think they're called over here in Australia. And you can get them if you've signed up to the Magical Manifesting course, the journal. I've got an image of them in the packet, and it shows you what they are. They're paper stumps, because I use them a lot, and you use them to like go around the images just to make it pop out from your page a bit. Those scissors, old books for your collaging. So this, I just went to the op shop, the second-hand shop, and I think I got that for 50 cents. I've got pages coming out, which is fine. But you can sort of see they've got a bit of a yellow page, yellow tinge around the pages, and I seem to like, I like that, the old look. And I scored this the other day. I was so happy. A music book. I love collaging with music. I think this is for bagpipes, so it doesn't really matter what sort of a music book it is. And napkins. They're really quite good for collaging as well. An example of that, I did this page the other day, yesterday, and you can see I put a napkin there, and when you do roll over it with the little roller, which I'll show you in a minute, you get some really nice texture. You can see that there, and even just to feel it, it's a really nice texture. And that's what art journaling is about, is different textures. And I think I've done that there as well. Yeah, that's a napkin as well. So that's the use of napkins. When using a napkin, and I'll pull this apart because I'll show you how I use it. There's a backing on there, and there's generally 2 layers, so that's one. They can be a bit tricky to get off. Come on. Someone showed me a trick the other day. What was it? She had tape. I saw this on YouTube to get your backing off. So if you just get a little bit of tape. How did she do it? I probably won't be able to do it now. Ah, come on. There you go. And then you pull the backing off because you don't want this excess. And that, you could use that instead of paper towel then. So that's your extra paper towel. But then you've got this nice light napkin. And if it's a white napkin, and you've done patterns underneath, if you glue this over the top, you can still see your patterns. So they're really effective to use as well. It's the old napkins. Now, I don't want to overwhelm you with all the other stamps and everything else that you can have. Like I said, textures, crayons, pencils, you can get, I will show you these though. These are watercolour crayons. So if you drew with it, let me show you, probably seen these before, but so basically, I'll do it on this one. So, drawing on there like that, I'll use Basil, so I'm going to use him in a minute anyway, and just dab off some of the water, and then so you can sort of see how it gives a green tinge, but you can still see the strokes that you've done. Or another way of using it is you can use it as a paint. So just dipping in water, wetting the bottom, and then you can paint with it. So that's another way that you can use them. So they're just watercolour crayons. Okay, so I'll pop those away, I won't use them though. Now, I will demonstrate a page, or how I get started on a page. And I was going to show you my roller as well. So these little rollers you can get in packs of 3 over here in Australia. They're just foam, and I've used it on paint. Used it on paint, and then it's gone a bit hard, so you don't get that raised texture. I think you can buy brayers. They're a bit more pricier, but I'm quite happy with using one of these. The brayers are quite hard. I'm not sure what they're made out of, a plastic or something. But with these, I quite like these because then you can stick. I had some paper that was, as you can see, it's like corrugated. So I've just stuck that on, and it gives you a really good texture. And also some bubble wrap. And I'll show you these as well. Because bubble wrap is really good actually. That's another go-to that I have to have, is bubble wrap. Let's see if I have got some here. So you can have it on a thing like that, or just a piece like that, and just dab it into your paint, and then you can dab it on for those spot. And also a lid as well. I'll show you that one. Alright, so oh, one more thing. Just like, oh, I need so much stuff. Where did I put it? I just had it. Actually, 2 more things. They're over here. So this is called double-sided tape, which is fantastic. So this side is sticky. Okay. And then when you take that off, you stick it on your piece of paper. I can stick it on this. I'll turn it over. Stick it down, and then you take the backing off, and then that's sticky. See? So that's double-sided tape, and that is really good for sticking pictures on, or little envelopes, or whatever it is that you might want to stick on to your page. I'm just going to put that back over. And then also these little booklets you can get of different coloured paper, instead of having to buy the big scrapbooking paper packs, which can be quite expensive. I found these, and these are only $2 each, these little books. That's Australian dollars. But you can get some really nice patterns in them. So doing a page, I'm not sure if you can see this. This is quite textured, this side, and this is quite flat. I prefer painting on the flat side. For some reason, if you're doing like drawings and paintings directly onto the paper, it tends to bleed out a bit, whereas I like this side, the flatter side, to work on. So that's something to be mindful of when you're having a play around, is just look at the texture of the paper as well and just see how you like it. So I'm going to be using, I just sort of pick out the colour schemes that I want to use, so I'm going to use that. I might put some of the blue washi tape on. I'll use those two because I love those colours. And to break it up, I might use some green because there's some green in the napkin. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason to this really. You can do whatever you like because you do, you know, layers. So, I mean, I'll do some of this pink on there as well just to make it pop a little bit. Right, so I will do this and I'll speed it up just so you're not sitting here watching me putting this together. Before I do speed it up though, it's good just to rip your paper. Oh, and PVA glue, that's the other thing I use. And I have it mixed up in just a little yogurt pot. I put 2 parts glue with 1 part water. Okay, that just helps it to go on. It can be a bit tacky when it's in the full, when it's not diluted. So I'm pretty sure that's all I use, except for scissors. But you can see me put a page together and, you know, decide on what you want to use. And here's some of my music book. I also have, this is quite handy, a bag of scrap paper. So anything I don't use I put in here, and then if I can't be bothered going through all my little books to find paper, I can just grab this little bag out and use that. And there was something else in here that I wanted to grab out. Where is it? Baby wipes. These are really good to use if you get glue on your hands, or to wipe your workplace down so you don't start sticking. So if you're gluing on against that and you put your page on, it's going to stick. So it's good to wipe that off. I find paper towel by itself is a little bit, it sort of sticks too much. If it's a wet wipe or a baby wipe, works better. Okay, so I've got those ripped up, and I like to, I have an old towel that I wipe my excess water off and everything. I like to stick the corners, I hope you can see that, yep, stick the corners to corner, and that just sort of helps it to, gives it a bit more strength. If you do go over, you can always trim it off with scissors, so you don't have to worry about that too much. So I'll get this started and I'll be back. Okay, so that's all the paper I want to put on there. I'm going to do some napkin placements now. So basically, well, I really like the butterfly, so I'm going to keep that image. They can be a bit hard to rip. Okay. I try to rip the straight edges off. They do stick to your fingers, that's why it's good to have these. And I won't do it very thick because I want to keep going. If you do clump it up so it's very thick when you stick it on and use a lot of glue, I would suggest leave it dry overnight, because if you don't get the glue right through the napkin, it will lift. So I'm just going to put some glue down. You're probably thinking I'm getting a bit slap happy with the glue, but it's fine because we're going to paint over it anyway. And then I'm just going to place the butterfly like that, and then with your paintbrush you can sort of, you know, get rid of that straight edge as much, and then gather him up just a little bit while you're putting it on. And then gluing over it so it will stick nicely. It shouldn't be too thick. Down here. So as you can see, it's a little bit gathered, but just sort of move it around and make sure it's quite damp. And try not to have too many creases in there, because that will take a bit to dry, that part down there, but it should be fine to do this demonstration with. And I'm going to put one more butterfly over the other side. You can go up here. I sort of covered up that music piece of paper in the corner there, so I'll try and leave these ones semi showing. But like I said, you know, you're going to paint over it anyway, so. A little bit more paint, add glue. You can dry this off with a hairdryer or a heat gun, because when you do some painting over that, it may actually lift. So it should be fine though. I'm just washing my brush out, old Basil. Give him a bit of a wash so he doesn't get too hard too quick, because it is hot over here in Australia. So basically that's the start of it. Just want to put the lid on my glue so I don't spill it. Right. So then we have got painting. So I wonder if I should use, I might actually use some of these crayons, seeing how I've already shown you that I have them. So I've got green, some pink, and blue, purple, and I think that'll do because we're going to use paint as well. And it's basically just colouring, scribbles, like I was saying before, you know, just plop it on and see how it looks. If you don't like it, you can always do another layer over the top of it. You really don't need to be perfect about this. And you can see where that paint, the glue is, where I'm putting my colours on. See how it's sort of, but we'll give it a go. Like I said, I only bought these really the other day, so I've only had a quick play with them. But they're good to use, they're handy to use. Where'd the blue one go? Sure, I had a blue one out. Fine, we won't use the blue one then. So those are the colours I'll go with. For this, I'm just going to get a fluffy brush. So he's a well-loved brush as well, but I don't use him for, so you can see he bends quite well. He's not glued up like Basil. And then it's basically one colour at a time, or you'll get a brown puddle, to put it nicely. Now, because that's wet still, I'm just going to dab it. And some of the colour will go up there. That's all my pink done. Wash my brush out. Do the green. Sort of make it go onto the bits of paper that you've collaged with as well. And that sort of helps to tie it all in, so it's just not like a piece of paper stuck on there. It becomes one. And then the purple. Purple's my favourite colour. It's pretty obvious. I think nearly all my paintings have purple in them, just about. And it's, you'll find, you know, what colours really talk to you as well. Don't be afraid to use them all the time, as long as it makes you happy. That's what's the point of what I'm teaching, is make you happy, because that's when you manifest, is when you're not thinking about all your worries and troubles, you're having fun. And, you know, we don't do this to become famous artists or anything. We do it to create and manifest. Well, that's why I do it anyway. That's what I want to teach. I'm thinking I do want some blue in there. I think I had a darker blue. I don't know where he went. He's going to crop up at some stage. Okay. Wash him out. So basically that's the start of it. And then the fun thing, you can have a palette, paper plates you can use. I could use, this is just a craft cutting mat, which I find is really good, because then if I do any cutting, like, I don't have to put something underneath it, it's already there. But you can use that as a palette as well. Your paint wipes off it. For backgrounds though, it's really quite easy just to do blobs of paint as such. Now you can use a paintbrush for the purpose of this though, just to show you something different. I'm going to use an old bank card that I've got, and it's basically just spreading that around. So as you can see, like those other colours, they're sort of getting a bit covered up anyway, so they don't have to be perfect. And neither does this, you know. And look at that beautiful texture on that napkin. I did that fairly gently, because if I scraped really hard, the napkin would lift. And then I will get the palette out in a minute, because I'm going to do some white as well. So you can leave texture. You can see that's got a groove in it. You can leave that if you like. I'm going to flatten that out a little bit though. Because I want to do some rolling with my little roller in a minute. So that's the start of it. You could hit it with the hairdryer now. Actually, I might go on and do that quickly. because there is raised bits of paint there that's quite wet, and if I do roll over it, it's just going to pick that paint up. So I will go and do that now. Okay, so I have dried that off. It's a little bit tacky, but that'll be okay. So I just have dinner plates, paper plates, and I use these when I'm doing the roller work. So when I'm using one of these, or the brayer, and I'm going to use white because I find that's the best one to use. It really makes it pop. I'll use white, and this is just a palette knife, and when you're doing work with a brayer or a roller, I like to spread it out to get an even coat. If you just want blobs on your paper, just, you know, put a blob of paint out and roll over it, and you just get one blob on your roller, and that will in turn go on your page. But I want to get a coating like such, and that'll bring out the napkin print. So because I've got a lot of paint on there, I'm just going to do gentle rolls. Like that. And then, I hope you can see that. Now a little bit of paint come off from that, but that's okay. Now, so I can show you my little grooved things. I might try a darker colour, so I'll try a darker blue and a darker purple. So, where did I have that? Got stuff everywhere. Colour, so I've got my purple here. That's the Jo Sonia one, but like I said, use whatever you've got on hand. I'm just going to put a little bit on there. It's probably a bit much, but wipe that white paint off there, and then I'm just going to spread that. Doesn't matter if some of the white gets on there. And I'm going to actually do this one, because you do see the white spots on a lot of pages, but I'm going to show you what it looks like to have a darker colour, because I think it looks quite effective as well. So just rolling that in your paint, and then, so I'm trying not to go over my butterflies, so I want some pattern up there, maybe there, and over there, and that's what you get. And like I said before, if you don't have the rollers, just get the, I'll try it with, just get a piece of bubble wrap, try not to pop it, I'm shocking for that, but you can get smaller bubble wrap. I found these, I think it was around a photo frame, so that's quite effective as well. And you just, I might actually put it in the white as well as the purple. So just do that, lift it up, and you can see that colour's on there, like that. And then just pressing down and then pulling up. Then you've got a different sized pattern from the other one. Okay. Now going back to the white, I don't think I will use this one. I'll do it on a piece of paper in a minute though, just to show you what it looks like. I'm just putting some more of the, this is titanium white, so it's a very bright white. Pop him over there to dry. And this is just a lid off a little spray bottle, but you can get one off your drink bottle, anything that's round really. I've got a bigger one here that's a medicine cup, one of those disposable ones that you have for your cough medicine. And basically, I'll just spread that out a little bit, just dabbing him in like that, and then do a couple of circles. And you can have it going off the page just for a bit of interest. That's where the old baby wipe comes in handy. You don't want paint on the back of your page. Do one right there. And you can do single ones. So that's just using the lid off a drink bottle or spray bottle. And I'll do a couple. This is a bigger one. So again, just dabbing him around, and you can do different colours. It doesn't have to be white. It could be the purple. And then you've got the bigger one. And then that's what that looks like. So that's just an easy background to do. And then if you print off some inspirational quotes, or have another good thing if you don't think you can draw or you don't like your drawing, is the colouring in books, adult colouring in books. Colour in a picture and cut it out, and you can stick that on. They look quite good. So you can do that as well. So I've just got paint all up my arm. So that's basically how I put together a page. The background, so I can leave that now if I sort of, oh, that's enough. I'll leave that to dry, and then I can come back to that tomorrow and think, oh, okay, I've got this idea and that idea, and you know, a couple of quotes that inspired by the butterflies or whatever it might be. So I'm going to leave that one to dry, and I'll just do a quick show you quickly what you can get. So this is with this pattern. I like these. They're so easy to use. Again, I'll use the blue. I don't use up my expensive paint. It's already got blue on it. So just squirting some of that on. Doesn't matter if there's purple in there. Spreading that out. And for this one, you can't have the paint too thick, otherwise it'll stick in the grooves, and it sort of defeats the purpose of it. So that's the corrugated paper. I don't even know where I got that from. I think it was out of a scrapbooking pack or something. So anything with a pattern on it, paper pattern, you can cut that out and use your double-sided tape to stick it to your roller. Just sort of roll him through, get it well covered, and then have this little pattern. So if you do that over a, you know, something that you've already started to decorate, that does look quite effective. And let me have a look. I think I've got another roller. I do. Oh, actually, I don't know if he's going to work because he's a bit painted up. So that's just elastic string that I've tied around it. And you get this really nice pattern. So just rolling him in. And then you get a string-like pattern. So again, that one looks quite good too, from that one. So if you go right to the outsides, it wouldn't pick up the paint on the edges there, but I'm not too fussed. Like I said, just stick things over it and everything else. So there you go. That is a background and how I put that together. So you can do that on a piece of paper. If you're going to stick paper in the journal, I would stick the paper in the journal first and then paint it. That's the best way, otherwise you might damage your artwork. The glue may seep through or something and damage it. So I hope you found that helpful. I hope I haven't overwhelmed with all the bits and bobs that I use, but find your feet and just go slow by little bits to start off with. But I would definitely get paints, brushes, some good paper, and even if it's just the paper to start off with, because you can stick these together later. So that's 190 GSM paper, watercolor paper that I use. And yeah, any questions, come into the group and ask, and happy to help. Bye.